Welcome to the Modern Titus to Women Unplugged podcast, where we dive fearlessly into the untold stories and struggles of women's lives. This is a space of authenticity where no topic is off limits. Each episode is a journey of discovery and empowerment, confronting challenges with honesty and vulnerability. From maintaining a home to healing from abuse, balancing motherhood with personal passions, and navigating single parenting, widowhood, divorce, and post-abortion heartbreak, we explore it all. With special guests offering wisdom and perspective, we uncover forgiveness and reignite love in marriage. Join us for soul-stirring conversations. Tune in. Your story matters. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, tax, professional advice. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or the management. This podcast may contain adult themes, so parental discretion may be advised. Welcome to the Modern Titus Unplugged podcast. Our podcast is one where we fearlessly dive into the unspoken struggles that shape the lives of women today. As part of our mentoring role, we seek resources and support designed to help women thrive. We explore strategies for achieving optimal well-being and performance in every aspect of life. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Savannah Heights, a licensed therapist specializing in sleep disorder and mental health. Savannah's expertise lies in supporting highly driven professionals who struggle with sleep deprivation and its detrimental effects on their overall well-being. With a focus on insomnia and nightmares, she guides her clients towards restful nights and rejuvenating sleep. Based in Central Florida, she offers in-person counseling while also providing virtual sessions for clients across Florida and New York. In Proverbs 3 verse 24 it says, "If you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet sleep." If you're among those wrestling with sleep disturbances and seeking a path towards better rest and mental health, Savannah Heights is a beacon of hope and expertise. Stay tuned and get those shovels as we delve into her insights and strategies for reclaiming restorative sleep and vitality. Savannah, welcome, and thank you for accepting our invitation. We're honored to have you as our guest. In the introduction, I gave a brief overview. If you would be so kind as to expound on that and, give people your credentials, and then give our listeners the nuts and bolts of how sleep actually works.
Thank you, Lorna, so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to your listeners, and I also just love the idea of what you're doing with the Modern Titus women. I'm a proponent of anything that tends to open up conversation and especially talk about things that maybe are hard or areas where we're not always comfortable sharing the real stuff going on. So I really respect the community that you're creating, and I'm really happy to be a part of this.
Thank you so much.
You introduced me really well. I'm Savannah Heights, a licensed clinical social worker here in Orlando, Florida. I practice both in Orlando and New York. And I specialize in treating highly driven, sleep-deprived professionals who feel exhausted and on edge and who are just ready to sleep through the night. So I'm really passionate about helping people to finally get that sleep that they've been looking for and helping them to feel more peaceful and restful even throughout their day as well. I did my original sleep training with the VA, working with veterans who had trouble sleeping, and I really grew to love this work. So now I am working in private practice, and it's just one of my favorite things. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. When I spoke to you in our preliminary talk, you spoke about, how sleep actually works, and I was very fascinated because I didn't know sleep worked like that. So if you could talk about that to our listeners.
Oh,
Is that
absolutely.
okay?
I think that's a great place for us to start because a lot of the work I do with people is first and foremost just talking about how does sleep actually work. We know how it doesn't work. We know what it feels like when it's not working, but we don't
Right,
always know how sleep is supposed to work on its own. And that's the
right,
thing is that sleep regulates itself. Our brain and our body already know what to do to regulate our sleep. They do it automatically without our intervention or any effort on our part. There's some things that get in the way of that maybe we'll discuss here in a few minutes. But for the most part, if nothing big is getting in the way, our brain already knows what it's doing and it regulates our sleep on its own. So it does that through three primary things. One is our circadian rhythm, which regulates the timing of our sleep. So this is basically our body's clock that tells us what time of day it is. And you might have heard of the hormone called melatonin. That's an essential part of telling our body's clock what time it is. This hormone is released when we experience daylight. When our brain senses that there's daylight, the daylight comes into our retinas and our eyes, and it shoots back to this back of a part of our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That's where our clock is housed in our brain, and it says, "Oh, it's daytime. We're sensing some light outside. Wake up." And it sends off lots of signals to the rest of our body saying, be awake, it's daytime. Our secretion of melatonin is suppressed when we have a lot of that daylight coming in because our body is saying, it's daytime, be alert.
right,
So we're getting
right.
alerting signals. Once we have a couple of hours without daylight, our brain senses that absence and says, oh, it must be getting close to nighttime now. I haven't seen light in a while. And that melatonin starts to be secreted that starts getting our body ready for transitioning into sleep. So it starts lowering our core body temperature, lowering our heart rate, slowing down our digestion. It just starts doing things to tell our body, okay, we're going to start transitioning here into sleep. So that works really well to help regulate the timing of when we're going to sleep. So that's what the circadian rhythm is. Does that line up with kind of what you feel like you've experienced in your life or what you knew about the circadian rhythm?
I knew that light had to do with it and sunlight and all of that, but the in-depth knowledge that you departed, I really didn't know how it works. So that's a very fascinating. I found that very fascinating, and it sort of ties into the other question, because a lot of persons work on shifts, especially in the medical field. You have
Mm-hmm.
the morning shift, you have the afternoon shift, and then you have the night shift, and these are normally like 2 weeks spell. So
Mm-hmm.
by the time you get accustomed to one, you get changed to the other. So
Exactly. Shift
what
workers have a really hard time because our body really likes to stay on a schedule. And our body has that clock that is going to tell us every day what time it is. And if we try to flip that on its head, our body's going to fight it pretty hard. Eventually, if we can use light in a manipulative way, we actually can convince our body that it's a different time of day. But that takes a lot of strategic work, working with a sleep specialist to do that. So for shift workers, there is a way you can do that, but you really have to use light strategically to tell your brain that it's a different time of day than it actually is. But yeah, shift workers have a really hard time just because our body really likes that regularity. Similarly, when we're eating on a regular schedule, when our social activities are on a pretty consistent schedule, those are also indicators to our body about what time of day it is. So that also really helps us to stay in sync, keeping our body clock the same time as the world clock or the time zone that we're in. So that's one thing that regulates sleep, but there's a few other things that might help our conversation too. The next one is called our sleep drive, and
right,
this is like our hunger for sleep. So similar to hunger for food and water, when we haven't had those things in a while, our body grows and starts to giving us lots of alerts saying, okay, we really need this now.
right, right.
Same thing happens with sleep. If we're not getting it, our drive for it increases. And that's really good because by the end of the day, our drive for sleep is very high if we've been awake all day long.
Yes.
That's what helps us to fall asleep at night, is because we have lots of pressure building up on our brain. It's a chemical pressure, the sleep
Yes.
drive. When we drink caffeine, that mutes the chemical pressure so that we don't feel it anymore. So that can be really disruptive to our sleep, which is why I recommend people not drink caffeine within about 10 hours of when they plan to go to bed.
Oh, 10
Because I
hours?
want,
I didn't know that's a
yeah,
big gap. That's a big
it
gap.
is. It's a big gap
Okay.
because caffeine takes a long time to get out of our system.
Really?
And if we get to bedtime and we're not very sleepy because we had caffeine at 3 p.m., our brain's communication to us that it's bedtime gets quiet and we can't really hear it. And so we're not as driven to fall asleep. We're going to have a harder time. It's the same thing too if we take a lot of naps throughout the day or if we sleep in on the weekends, we're getting more sleep like later into the morning. And then by the time we get to that evening, our drive for sleep is lower than we want it to be. So we have a harder time falling asleep. So these things really work together. The sleep drive and their circadian rhythm, they regulate our sleep naturally. We really don't have to do anything other than follow those instincts. What gets in the way is when we start to do things that we think will help, but we're really compensating for feeling tired. So if I'm feeling really tired because I had a bad night, which happens sometimes, and I decide to sleep really late on the weekend, I might feel like I'm giving myself a break and giving myself more rest when really I'm confusing my biological clock. I'm telling it, no, it's really not daytime yet. No, don't worry about it. It's actually still nighttime. Let's keep sleeping. And I'm telling my sleep drive, let's get more and more and more and more until I'm really full of sleep. So then by the time it's time to come to bed later that night, I'm still kind of full. Like I'm not that hungry for sleep yet.
Right.
And my body clock is like, wait, is it really bedtime? Because we were just asleep like a few hours ago. So we kind of get in the way of ourselves there. But if we don't do that, then our sleep regulates itself just fine on its own.
I, my parents are in the late 80s, and they sleep late, and then during the day they nap,
Uh-huh.
like a nap, I suppose. And then I can call them 10:30 in the night, and they're up, and I'm like, Mom and Dad, why you guys are up? Oh, we're watching a movie. You know, so
Yep.
yeah,
They're
so
enjoying their evening when maybe they should be going to bed pretty soon, but they took a
exactly.
long nap during the day.
During my research, I read something about Japan. In Japan, that they actually allow people to take naps at work in order for them to be able to be more productive at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think naps can be used strategically. So if you're taking a short nap, like maybe 20 minutes, like a power nap, that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. As long as you take it early enough in the day that you're giving yourself a lot of time to build that sleep drive back up. So if I take an hour and a half nap, then I might not have enough time in the afternoon of being awake for my drive
Mm-hmm.
to get nice and high like it needs to be.
Right.
Or if I'm taking my 20-minute nap, but I'm taking it at 6 p.m., then that's going to get in the way of me falling asleep later that night. But if I want to take a 20-minute nap that's at, 12 or 1 p.m., that's okay. Our circadian
Mm-hmm.
rhythm naturally takes a dip around that time of day. We all naturally feel drowsy after lunchtime, and that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just recommend if you're having trouble sleeping at night, try out cutting out the naps. But if your nighttime sleep is just fine, then naps are okay during the day, as long as you're being mindful of how it's impacting you and how long you're sleeping.
Right, right. Good information. Good information there. Then, how does nightmare occur during our sleep? Her, I'm interested to find out about that, and I suppose our listeners are interested to see how this. Normally, they say, oh, if you're watching a scary movie, sometimes it impacts, you know, or in like when we're from the Caribbean island, and we have nightmares to say you ate too late.
Oh, uh-huh,
If you had a late dinner, you ate too late.
uh-huh.
That's why you're dreaming all kind of nonsense.
I've heard that myth. I don't know if it's true. I
I
haven't
don't
really
know.
researched to say that if you eat later at night, then you'll have more nightmares. But nightmares are something that happens during REM sleep. So that's rapid eye movement, which is a certain stage of sleep. We all experience REM sleep a couple of times throughout the night. And that's where dreaming and nightmares happen. What's really interesting about this stage of sleep is that your brain is actually functioning as if it's awake. So we are paralyzed. We're experiencing muscle atonia only during REM sleep because if our muscles weren't paralyzed, we'd be up and doing all this stuff, acting out our
Oh.
dreams because our brain is really functioning as if it's awake. So what our brain is doing during REM sleep, whether we're dreaming or if we're having a nightmare, is that it's trying to categorize information. There's a lot of research being done on dreaming and nightmares. Some of it is still pretty preliminary, so there's a lot we still don't know about dreaming. But what we do know is that when we go to sleep and we have dreams and then we wake up the next day, we're typically, studies show, more quickly able to solve problems. Like if we are given a word puzzle and then we go to bed and we dream about it and we wake up, we're more quickly able to find the solution to the puzzle.
I agree with you because sometimes when I have something that I don't know what to do, and I don't know the solution, I just normally d- go to sleep. Well, because of my faith, I'll pray about it, and 9 out of 10 times I wake up with a solution. It's not
hmm
totally solved, but a reasonable, workable solution.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's where that phrase, just sleep on it,
sleep
you
on
want to
it.
sleep on a
Okay,
decision.
yes.
Because your
Okay.
brain is going to be doing some trial and error. When we're having dreams, our brain is acting out potential scenarios and
Mhm.
seeing what could happen if I did this, what could happen if I did this.
Mhm.
It's like practicing. And
Mm.
during that stage of sleep, our brain is also making connections between our emotions and our behavior. So that's really helping us regulate the way we feel and manage our emotions during the day. So dreams are
Okay.
actually really important for us.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nightmares actually are also a part of that same process. There's a few different theories as to why we have nightmares and what they're doing for us. But a lot of people and researchers believe that nightmares are helping us to process things that happened during our life that we've not been willing to process during the day. If we have a traumatic experience or something really scary happens, we might feel too fearful to think about it during the day and we try and avoid it or push away those
Mm.
thoughts or feelings because they're really painful.
Right.
But our brain, in order to move forward, has to take that experience and categorize it somehow and pull information from it and say, why do I think that happened? And what are the ways I might respond differently in the future?
Mhm.
So your brain needs to do that processing and information categorizing, but it can't do it if we are shutting off all of those thoughts
Right.
and
You're
feelings.
suppressing it like.
hmm
Okay.
So it
Okay.
makes us do it during the night.
Mhm.
And we want to let that nightmare happen. If we avoid sleep because we're too afraid of having a nightmare, we're still depriving our brain the ability to process that experience. And better yet, the more we avoid sleep, once we do have sleep, there's an experience called REM rebound, where we might, for the next couple of nights after we've avoided sleep or not slept very well, we actually will spend more time in the REM stage of sleep
Oh
because our
wow.
brain knows we need it. So it will cause us to
Mm.
have like double REM the next night,
Mhm.
which means more dreaming. So, moral of the story is let yourself dream and don't try to avoid that, even if you are experiencing some distressing nightmares.
Mhm. Okay. I think you touched on some of this already, where traits that make a poor sleeper. I think you've touched on it in little pieces as we went along there. Is there anything there that you would like to expound on, like?
Yeah, I think there's certain personality traits that are
Mhm.
precursors to having difficulty sleeping.
Mhm.
Um, these are things that don't necessarily cause us a problem sleeping,
Mhm.
but if too many of these factors line up with a really stressful life event or a big change, like having a baby or getting a new job or a change to your schedule, if too many of those stressors line up, and also you have a lot of character traits that predispose you to poor sleep, that could create a a problem like insomnia. So some of those traits are being a person who has high cognitive arousal. What I mean by that is a person who has a brain that thinks really quickly and thinks quite a lot. This could be an anxious brain, or it could just be a really fast thinker or really critical thinker, but someone who does quite a lot of big thinking. Everyone's brain's a little bit different. Some of us are a little bit more chill and go with the flow, and our thoughts come a little bit more slowly. Other people have a lot of thoughts throughout the day. And if you're one of those, your brain is just likely to be thinking and thinking and thinking, even all the way up to the time you want to be asleep, because you got a lot of things that you want to be thinking about. And that can impact your sleep if too many of those factors fall in line. Same thing if you are someone who experiences a lot of anxiety, or if you're someone who tends to push away your emotions during the day. The time that those feelings are eventually going to come back up is when you let your guard down and when you try to relax. And some of us who push away our feelings don't tend to relax until it's time to go to sleep. So of course, that's the time when all of those feelings and thoughts about your day are going to pop up and demand to be heard. Right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's true, because sometimes something might happen at work and I'm probably upset about it, and I go into my bed and I'm like, I should have said this, I should have said that, I should have did this, I should have.
Right. We're rehearsing all of our conversations during the day. I said, the cashier said, enjoy your groceries. And I said, you too.
Yeah, that's true. You sort of rehash it and say what you should have done differently. That is so true. Now, some of the ladies wanted me to ask you about newborns. I know that it's not part of your expertise, because you're not a pediatric doctor, but since you do deal with sleep, they're new parents, and they're not getting much sleep, especially for the first 3 months. This baby is just taking control and running them ragged. But for me, I remember that when I had my first child, I had my extended family. I had my mother there and my grandmother. And you know what the first thing they told me? This is not a dolly baby. This is not a toy baby, right? This thing will manipulate you. So you need to get structure. You need to bathe the baby when you're supposed to bathe. At the same time, you need to feed the baby at the particular time. You can play with the baby, but wrap him up and put him back and let him sleep. So for me, that worked with all of my children. I did that all along. I didn't have much problem, but I've been telling them to get structure, but they like the holding of the baby and the kissing of the baby, sleeping, but when
Absolutely.
that's where the problem is.
Well, that was fantastic advice that you were given. And, all of us parents have to take every piece of advice that we're given with a grain of salt, because every single baby is different. But the reason why that works well, to have your kids on a lot of structure and consistent schedule, is because the circadian rhythm, like I was talking about earlier, it's our body's clock. It tells us what time it is, and it tells our body what it should be doing next. Should it be alert right now, or should it be sleepy right now, or should it be hungry right now? It's that internal clock that tells it to do those things.
Right.
So with babies and young children, it's light that helps that, but it's also routine behaviors. If they're eating at the same time every day, if they're having their nap at the same time every day, if we're going to the park and socializing at the same time every day, or playing, that gives their body something to hold on to, and it knows what to expect next, and will gear it physiologically, will give them signals as to what to do next, what to get ready for. Specifically with infants, they actually don't secrete any melatonin for the first 12 weeks or so.
Really?
Their body does not have a circadian rhythm. For the first 12 weeks, they have no sense of day or night, no sense of time. So that's all on us. We are the body clock for them.
Okay.
That's why those schedules are so important. And for
Okay.
instance, during those first 12 weeks, there's no difference between night and day for them. So they're going to
Mhm.
sleep quite a lot. And it's like day or night doesn't matter. They're just going to sleep all the time as much as they can, usually in 3 or 4 hour chunks, but they'll wake
Right.
up about once an
Right.
hour, and that's really
Right.
normal.
Mhm.
And then as
Mhm.
they get older, once they're like 3 months to 6 months, that's when their body actually develops that circadian rhythm and starts secreting the melatonin to tell their body what time of day it is. So during that time, we are telling the baby's body, yes, you're right, it is noon. Like we've been doing this thing at noon every day. You're
Right.
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 We're giving that feedback to the
Right.
body clock and getting them synced. So that's why that schedule is so important because
Okay.
they don't have a clock when they first come
So,
out.
so grandma and mom were probably doctors, so the sleep doctors.
It sounds like they just had some good ancestral wisdom.
Yes, 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 yes.
But the other
Yeah.
thing I think is important, especially for parents of newborns or young children, is that they're taking their own sleep seriously. So
Mhm.
you know you're going to be sleep deprived if you're having a baby. That's something you can expect. But you also do want to get as much rest as you can. The idea of sleep when the baby sleeps or sleep when someone comes over to help you, do the dishes or clean
Right.
the house, do it. Now, that doesn't mean you're always necessarily going to feel like falling asleep at that moment. That's okay. You don't have to force it. But if you do feel sleepy enough to sleep during that time, we
Mhm.
can break the nap rule. Like, let yourself have the nap. It's also important to do a lot of strategizing with your partner. So if
Mhm.
you're a parent who has a partner, talking with them about who's going to do what activities during the night to care for the baby is really
Mhm.
helpful. Like getting creative with that conversation of
Mhm.
how can the non-nursing parent support the nursing parent,
Mhm.
because they're going to be doing a lot of that evening work,
Yes,
feeding
that's
the
true.
baby so many times at night.
Mhm.
So talking ahead of time about, okay, so what can the non-nursing parent do? Can they be
Mhm.
the one to go get the baby from the crib and bring it to the nursing parent?
Yes.
And can they be the one to change the diaper and then rock them back to sleep afterwards? How can we communicate about that? That's really the most important thing, I think, for parents during that
Mhm.
really sleep deprived time is communicating as much as you can.
Right.
Because you're going to very easily miscommunicate because your mood is tanking because you're not
Yes.
well
You're
rested.
cranky and all of that.
That's just how it is, and that's okay. That's okay for
Yeah.
this time.
Yes.
But keep talking to each other as much as you can and try to
Mhm.
support each other and strategize how you're going to support each other.
Yes. Yes. Well, the other thing I wanted me to speak about, ask you to expound on, was the whole thing about menopause.
Hmm.
I remember when I was going through mine, I had the AC cranked up. I thought, other people thought they was in the Antarctic zone or something, the way it was cold. And I was sweating profusely, having to change my pajamas or nightgown because I was just so wet.
Hmm.
And you feel exhausted and just beaten up, just
Hmm.
beaten up. So they wanted to, some of them are having that experience, so they wanted me to ask you, about that.
Well, you're not alone in that experience. That's very common. And that is what most researchers see is the primary disruptor of sleep for women during perimenopause
Mhm.
is those vasomotor symptoms, meaning the
Mm.
hot flashes and the
Right.
sweating and the temperature dysregulation. That really causes that difficulty sleeping.
Mhm.
Lowering our temperature is one of the things our body does in response to melatonin release. It's
Mhm.
like a cue that tells our body we're getting ready for bed, it's nighttime. Melatonin
Mhm.
doesn't put us to sleep, it doesn't cause us to be sleepy, but it creates a bunch of other changes in our body that get us ready for sleep, like
Mhm.
lowering our core body temperature.
Right.
So when our hormones are really different and changing quite a bit during that menopause period, suddenly we're not getting a regularity of melatonin release. So all those indicators are not coming at the consistent times that they used to get our body ready for bed. And also, suddenly our temperature is out of whack. It's not consistent. It's not lowering like it needs to, and that's going to make us really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think that's really common, and the main thing that we can do to treat that is keeping your temperature cool at night,
Right. Right.
keeping your sheets cool,
Mhm.
making sure that you have water with you, you're staying really hydrated,
Mhm.
getting up to cool off if you need to. I
Right.
don't recommend that people lay in bed miserable for long periods of time
Right.
because then you're actually training your brain that the bed is the place you go when you're frustrated and alert. We want your brain to think that your bed is the place you
Mhm.
are when you're relaxed and sleeping. And so if you're laying in bed drenched in sweat and you're awake and you're not falling asleep anytime soon, don't just lay there in it. Get up and change your clothes, get some cold water, do
Right.
some
Right.
deep breathing to lower that blood pressure. Those things are going to help you kind of reset and then try again for
Mhm.
sleeping. But that's a
Mhm.
really normal experience. There's also been a lot of good evidence shown that hormone therapy can be really helpful as well. So
Yeah.
that's something for women to consider too if those symptoms are really disturbing their
Mhm.
sleep.
I explored that, but I wasn't a good candidate because I had some underlying health condition that I wasn't a good candidate for it. So I had to just suffer
Mm-hmm.
through the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The good news is that poor sleep is not doesn't necessarily have to happen during menopause if you had it in premenopause. Like just because you were a poor sleeper or had insomnia during premenopause doesn't mean you're going to have it during menopause. If you did have poor sleep during that
Mhm.
perimenopause period, that doesn't mean that's going to continue postmenopause. Um,
Okay.
each of those time zones for you and your life stage are really different when it comes to sleep.
Mhm.
So it might just be a sense of waiting it out, but that's a long time to wait as well. Everybody is different,
Right.
but there's definitely help to be found. So
Right.
working with a sleep specialist, specifically a behavioral sleep specialist like me, someone who does cognitive behavioral therapy,
Right.
can really help you learn different skills for how to respond when you're experiencing that sleep difficulty so
Mhm.
as to lessen it and not make it worse because we
Right.
have this tendency to try and get ahead of our poor sleep by doing things that actually make it worse.
I can vouch that. I remember when we had a preliminary discussion, and I was telling you that I have half of my bed with books. I think I saw you looking like that. I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but as I explained to you that I'm a widow, so the loss of a spouse is a serious and life changing event. Yeah, it's a whole change of your whole mindset, and you're forced to cook for one person instead of two, and you know y- y- simple things as hearing somebody uh, just affirmation about you, like my husband used to say. He used to say, "The lovely Lorna Fay, thank you that you're mine. I'm so happy that you're mine." I'm
Oh,
not hearing anybody say that to me anymore. But the most of it, the hard part to face is when you have to go to the bedroom every night. There's no more laughter, no more hugs. You're just there. So what I do, the side that he will sleep on, I put books there that I want to read. If I have bills that I need to pay, anything that is important, I put over there. When I take my shower and relax a little bit, I go there and I read what I want to read, and. But when I was telling you, I saw your face like, oh, like you should be doing that.
there's no judgment here. I mean,
I know.
everyone deals differently with different experiences in their life, and we don't know this stuff. We don't know the
Yeah.
way conditioning works when it comes to sleep, and that if we
Mhm.
do things like read or work or
Mhm.
pay bills in bed, that we're actually conditioning our brain to be alert and to be doing lots of stressing
Mm-hmm.
during bedtime. We don't know that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes working with a professional to learn some of that and to strategize, like, okay, I didn't realize this, but this habit I've been doing to make me feel better about
Mm-hmm.
returning to the bed without my partner there.
Mm-hmm.
It helps me feel distracted for a minute, which is useful,
Mm-hmm.
but then it also ends up doing this other thing that is hurting my relationship with my bed. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of learning and strategizing that happens when you're working through learning how to sleep again.
Right, right, right. Actually, that evening when you spoke, when we spoke, I actually did try to work inside my living room with the stuff, and I was like, nah, ain't gonna happen.
That's okay. If you're not having insomnia right now, then
So,
you're totally
so,
good to do whatever
yes,
you want. And if
yes,
you are having insomnia, then it might take looking at some other strategies. There's
right,
not one right thing that's going to work for everyone.
right, 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 right.
But I think it makes sense to have trouble sleeping and adjusting to such a big life change,
Yes, it is.
like losing a partner who you
Mhm.
used to spend so much of your time with, who you're
Right.
comfortable with.
Yes.
And grief absolutely impacts sleep.
Mhm.
Studies show that for the most part, it goes the other way around, that insomnia tends to make it more difficult to move through grief.
Right.
So if you are not sleeping very well for more than a significant period of time, for
Mhm.
a while that's going to be normal to have some
Right.
disruption during such a big life change like that. But
Mhm.
after a while, if it's been a few months and you're not sleeping still,
Mhm.
that's actually going to get in the way of your healing process
Right.
and
Absolutely.
how you deal with moving forward in your life.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
it's important to pay attention to that.
Yeah. But I took a different approach. I grieve, but I say, I grieve, but I don't stay there. I didn't stay there. I channel my energy into other things like this. What I'm doing here, channel my energy into other things that are more positive that can help others. So that's what
Yeah,
I did.
using that love that you have for your partner and
Mhm.
finding other ways for that to still be
Mhm.
present for you.
Yes. Well, we're going to be wrapping up soon, and this was very, very informative. And want to thank you, Savannah, for your insights. You have undoubtedly left an indelible mark, on our understanding of what restful sleep is. So before we go, I'd like you to give tell our listeners and give them an opportunity if they want to connect with you, how to get in touch with you. So if you want to tell them all about that.
Absolutely, and thank you for giving me the space to share my information. So you can call me if you're interested in talking more with me about this, or if you think that you might be having a sleep problem and you're interested in what some of the treatment options are.
Mhm.
You can call me at 407 720 9903, or you can go to my website, which is www.savannahhypeslcsw.com. So that's two N's in Savannah and then two H's back to back, one at the end of Savannah and one at the beginning of Hypes
Right,
with a
right.
P. So that's my website. My email is connect@savannahhypeslcsw.com. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Savannah Hypes LCSW. I love connecting with people. I love public speaking. So if you think that my information would really help an organization that you know about and you'd like me to come share with them, I would love to do that.
All right.
Whether it's speaking to a school or any other ways that I could be helpful in providing information.
All right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So here it is. Here it is. As we bid farewell to this episode, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to Savannah for gracing us with her presence and sharing her invaluable insights. Her passion for empowering individuals to reclaim restorative sleep and vitality serves as a beacon of hope in our journey towards holistic wellness. Join us in our future endeavors as we continue fearlessly diving into the unspoken struggles that shape the lives of women today. May you find solace in the embrace of sweet sleep, knowing that each night offers the promise of renewal and restoration. Thank you, Savannah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.